So, good morning. Welcome to the fourth in our series of short webinars on different aspects of building value in your technology business. Today, we're going to look at people and management. Those who don't know me, I'm Peter Watson. I'm Managing Director at Prism Corporate Broking. As you can see from my CV on the screen, I've been advising technology businesses for over 15 years now, I guess. And over that time, we've worked with lots and lots of different businesses. So hopefully we can share a little bit of our experience doing that. Who are Prism? Well, we're a business broking and advisory boutique. We're located just outside Cambridge, and we help owner managers to buy and sell technology businesses. For us, technology certainly includes software and IT services. That would be a primary strand for us, but also telecoms, infrastructure, and some other technologies like environmental technologies. What we don't do is specifically drug development, biotech in that sense. We don't actually do that, although it might be a good place to be at the moment. So just give you a little very brief examples, some sort of deals that we've been involved in. I'm not really going to talk about those, but you may recognize one or two of the names there. Anyone who's sort of around the Cambridge area might recognize the Arm. Obviously there are sort of rumors about Arm being taken over by another chip manufacturer at the moment, but we will see. So before I progress further, I'd just like to draw your attention to the question facility within this webinar. We will definitely have some time and give some time at the end to questions. And so I'd ask, if you do have a question, just tap it out in the panel, and that will then get forwarded to us. It will Alison will then forward that on to me, and then hopefully I can answer it at the end. If we don't get a chance to answer your specific question, then we will try and do so after the webinar, or do email Alison at prismcorporatebroking.com, and she will ensure that you get a response. Okay, so I'm now going to share a model that actually was developed at Cranfield School of Management. Came out of their business growth program, which I've had some involvement with over the years. And I think it's very useful, and it was derived from actual data. So they basically interviewed a whole host of entrepreneurs, and they came up with this grid, which, being a management school, business school, is a 2x2 grid. But what it does is it looks at your key staff and their business skills, so whether they have high level of business skills or low level of business skills, and then compares that with the owner manager's, I might say, preoccupation with routine management tasks. So the degree to which the owner manager is still doing routine management tasks rather than leaving his key staff to do those things. And they've got these 4 boxes. So if I take you through those in turn, hold on, let me just. So the first box is called the artisan box. So this is where we don't really have very many staff, probably. The staff we do have a relatively low level of business skills. We're not doing a lot of management, and it would suit typically a sort of small consultancy type business, where the owners of the business are really providing all of the knowledge and skills to their clients. So that would fall into a sort of artisan model. We then go into the model which is denoted hero. So this is where the owner manager is getting involved in routine management tasks, and he or she, I should say, have a staff with a relatively low level of business skills. So it's called the hero because with almost every problem, the owner manager is the best person to sort out the problem. Now that makes the owner manager feel quite good about themselves, hence the hero notation, but it's not actually that good for developing a business. We then move on to the case where the owner manager is still getting involved in the routine management tasks, but they have employed some key staff with a high level of business skill. So what they're actually becoming is a meddler. So rather than letting the management team get on with things, they are making it difficult for them. So the classic meddler position. And then finally, finally, we move to the strategist box. So this is where we've got an owner manager that has managed to remove themselves from the day-to-day routine management tasks. They've developed a management team, and the management team are running the business, leaving the owner manager to be involved in more strategic issues. Now, it's no great surprise that from a selling the business point of view, the strategist is the optimal box. But if I now look at the percentage from the research of entrepreneurs in each box, we can see that actually it's not the most common. So, so there we are. You can just see. So a small amount of artisans, but the bulk of entrepreneurs are actually in the hero and meddler box, which shows how difficult it is to get into the strategy box. I know people have sometimes said, well, if you're a very small business, it's quite difficult to get into the strategist box, and I would accept that to some extent. But when you come to selling your business, it's going to be much easier to do it if you're not an integral part of it. So actually, for most businesses with some staff, you really can almost certainly give more to your staff than perhaps you're doing at the moment. It's certainly, this is really valid when we come across owner managers. They often, can recognize themselves in those one or other of those bottom two boxes and realize that actually they do need to do something about it in advance of a sale. So let's have a little look about a few things that you might be able to do. So the title is Grow Your People, Not Your Ego, for obvious reasons. So the first thing to say is that getting into a strategist role won't just happen. You do actually have to consciously plan it. And if you have an intention to sell your business in 3 years or 5 years or whatever timescale it is, it all starts with a plan, and you can reduce your impact on the business over time. It's quite difficult to do it over a very short period of time, but it's certainly possible over over a number of years to completely remove yourself from day-to-day operations. And it all starts with a plan. It's amazing how often people sort of get thrown into a sales situation really without having thought about it, without having planned it. And with most things, what is it? Planning prevents piss poor performance, I think it is. Good planning prevents piss poor performance, or perfect planning prevents piss poor performance. So anyway, so definitely a need for a plan. People often see that role of strategist perhaps as a chairman role, and that certainly can be the case. And we have a business we're working with and have worked with for a number of years on a series of acquisitions where the owner of the business has put himself into a chairmanship position and really has removed themselves from the day-to-day running of the businesses now underneath him. But that is it's a substantial business, and it can be quite difficult, I think, for smaller businesses to separate the role of chairman from CEO. And what often happens is that the owner manager calls themselves the chairman and they appoint an MD or CEO, but actually the power all still sits with the owner manager. So it becomes a sort of CEO in name only, and that's really not what we're trying to achieve. So I think don't be fooled into thinking that, you know, changing the title is going to necessarily change the actions. And I think it's also worth saying, for most small businesses, the chairmanship role is really quite a part-time role. You are looking to support your management team, but it might be that you're only with them, you know, half a day a week. I mean, you know, chairmanship role often might come in for board meetings once a month and have maybe one-to-ones with the management team each week, maybe. That's the sort of level of involvement of a traditional chairman. So you do need to build your team, and I think this is an area where we also see some mistakes made, and I guess some of those are because it seems a good idea to bring in senior staff to bolster your management team in the run-up to sale. But what we often find is that these staff come in relatively unproven in a small business environment, and just don't really work out quite as you planned, and you then risk actually paying quite a lot of money for these people. The performance of the business doesn't pick up. So just at the time when you need the EBITDA of the business to be increasing, it actually starts decreasing. So we much prefer to look first at your existing staff and see how you can develop those staff. Give them the skills to allow them to take more senior roles in the business. And we've certainly seen that work really, really well. I think if you are going to recruit, then I think you should be very clear that you only recruit if you actually can meet the requirements. So just because you get a group applying to the advert, that doesn't mean to say that you should necessarily employ any of them. That you repent at your leisure in terms of recruitment. So we really like it where you can try and bring people through the business, because you tend to get a much greater degree of loyalty from them, and that's important when you're going into a sale process. Next up, the subject of incentives, and certainly it can be helpful to align your management team with yourself when selling the business. We're a little wary, I have to say, of monetary incentives. We think that it's something that owner managers often latch onto and see, well, I'm not really, you know, I should be rewarding my staff on the KPIs of the business and so on, and they go into complex bonus schemes. And yet we actually find that they're probably a bit less motivational than expected. And just when you need your staff to be fully behind you, perhaps when the business is struggling a bit, you find that the bonus schemes are not actually paying out. So instead of providing a positive effect, they're actually providing a negative effect just when you need a positive effect. So we're not great fans of that. But we do like certain share-based incentives, and particularly options which are exercisable upon sale. So these options exist, but if they leave the company, they expire, and they can only be actioned when the business is actually sold. So it's really a no-brainer for an owner manager. You can value them, giving them what uplift you want in terms of value. You can make them tax efficient, but you don't have to worry about creating a whole myriad of smaller shareholders, because they literally only be shareholders for a microsecond in the completion arrangements. And we think that can be, for key staff, that can be a really, really good way of aligning them with your goal to sell the business. And it may even allow you to actually bring them at a relatively early stage into your planning for an exit, and that can be really helpful, because going through an exit process without the backing of your management team is going to be difficult. Perhaps one for another day, but definitely one of the obstacles. It can be an obstacle. And then just looking at at holidays, you really should be able to go away from your business and not touch your mobile phone for a few days, and the business to run itself. That is the sign of a business in control. So if you're still working long hours, working at weekends, then you've got a little way to go in terms of relinquishing yourself or moving yourself out of the business. So just wanted to give you an example of a deal where actually the sort of people management were really quite key in it. Now, I've not got a whole list of these because there's often other strategic imperatives which perhaps are higher up the order. But in this particular instance, I do think that actually the managing directors, the owner manager's approach rather to people and management was absolutely key in this deal going forward. And it was the sale of Anatune to Crawford Scientific, and Anatune sold and still sell analytical instrumentation. And it was really interesting because during the process, the owner manager was actually had to go over to the States for 3 weeks. I think he had a planned holiday in the States 3 weeks, just at the time when Crawford Scientific really wanted to meet the management team. And so rather than stressing about that, we actually saw that as a positive, because Ray had got a team that really could manage themselves and had confidence and so on. It was possible for Ray to go away and actually leave the management team to run that presentation. Now, we did, Prism were there as well with them, in fact, and we did do some practices, but it was incredibly powerful to have the team without the owner manager there, capable of really talking about the business, what the plans for the future were. It was really, really positive, and I think it was a key actually to that deal going through in the way that it did. So it just shows it really does matter. So conscious of time, a few things that you can do now. Well, I've shown you that model, the Cranfield model, the medalers and heroes and so forth. Consider where you are on that and what you might need to do to get further into that top right-hand box. Now, you may not be able to get the whole way there. That may not be essential, but nonetheless, the more you can detach yourself from routine management tasks, the better when it comes to selling your business. Likewise, if you can align your team with a clear goal, an exit can provide a very clear goal and incentivize them appropriately. That can really help you motivate the team going forward. I sometimes call it the sort of the last lap, and actually this is such an important time. Once you've got a clear goal to sell the business, everyone's working together, you can suddenly find that actually the business starts going much better than it has done for a while because we've got that clear direction. Try to work on the business, not in the business. It's to some extent a reflection of point 1, but it's a good thing to have in mind. Am I working on the business or am I working in the business? Try and delegate. And start a plan, your plan to exit the business. All journeys begin with the first step. What can that be for you? Well, perhaps organize a one-to-one call or Teams meeting with one of our directors of corporate finance. Absolutely no obligation. It just will give you a chance to someone to start asking you the questions relating to your sort of readiness, and also just your sort of personal, getting the personal stuff right. Why do it? Why sell? Why not sell? It can be really helpful, I think, to have a sort of sounding board, and perhaps that would be a good first step in the process. So thanks very much for that. We've now got a little bit of time, I think, just to have, if there are any questions that you've got on that. I appreciate this. It's a very, quick and dirty seminar, but hopefully there's some things in there that you can take out. Right, I've got a question here from Alistair. I've been told that I'm probably the best person to do new business development due to my experience and the comfort, comfort that a customer gets dealing with the owner. Is this a problem? Good question, and it is often the case that an owner manager is the most convincing salesperson that the business has. I guess no, it needn't be a problem, but it becomes more of a problem the more hand to mouth the business is. So if the business is about adding recurring income, subscribing customers that stay with you and keep buying from you, then actually losing a key business development resource doesn't stop the business in its tracks. And therefore it will be easier probably to transition away and put in a new team and a new process. If it's very much hand to mouth, as you really need to win the sales to keep the cash flow going, then it can become more of an issue, and it probably does have an effect on the period in which you would need to continue to work for that business. I would still say that if you can start bringing in other people to do at least elements of that new business development process, that will be helpful. And try as much as you can to break the development process into different elements that different people can do, so that you're not a sort of single point of failure in terms of the business going forward. Hopefully that answers your question, Alistair. I don't know if there are any more. Bear with me. A question from Tom: is it realistic to go from meddler to strategist after 20 years of meddling? Okay, well that's yeah, no, that's another good question. So I think there isn't a, you know, it's not actually a box, is it? You jump from one box into the other box. So there's a spectrum, and it's about reducing one's meddling behavior and spending more time in the strategic elements of the business. And I think anyone, however long you've worked, you can still modify behaviors. So are you going to completely change your management style? Probably not, but can you actually be more conscious of that management style and adapt it to allow your team to do more? And perhaps, you know, you can have help to do that. So it doesn't have to be just you doing it. I mean, maybe, you know, I know some owner managers that pull in a coach to sort of help them with certain aspects, things like that, which can be helpful. So hopefully, you can modify behaviour and in a positive way on your business. Okay, I've got one more. How are we doing for time? It's still okay. From Susan: when should I tell staff of my intentions? I feel this could be really disruptive. Yeah, another good point. It certainly can be disruptive, and particularly if you can't tell them anything. So if you just say, well, I'm going to sell my business, the first question they will ask is, well, who to? How's it going to affect me? And you can't at an early stage answer any of those questions. So it probably doesn't make sense to immediately engage them. It's slightly different, perhaps, with a management team, where you might have that sort of the conversations about the future a bit more often, and it might be easier to get them involved in a process, perhaps once again using things like share options and so on as a means of incentivizing them, making sure that they can benefit from an exit event. So I think one should be cautious. There is no single answer, right answer here. Sometimes, you know, we certainly worked with owner managers where all of the staff were aware of the exit intentions. We've worked with others where actually the first really inkling that they had that things are changing was when we arranged a meeting and the new owner gets to present to them. And neither is necessarily wrong as an approach. So I think it depends a bit on the relationship, the existing relationship you have with them, and the degree to which it's going to be beneficial to tell them. So if it's just giving uncertainty and no positive effect, then it's probably not sensible to do that. You know, it's not certain until the deal is done. Yeah. Okay, well, hopefully, Susan, that's answered your question a bit, but clearly that's not a simple thing, and we'd be happy to talk with you further on that. I think given the time, I'm going to need to move on, so we'll answer any other ones to you after this webinar. Just wanted to tell you about some virtual one-to-one clinics that we're running for 50 minutes at different times on the hour, I think it is, on Wednesday morning. And that's just a conversation, typically over Teams, with one of our directors of corporate finance, and it just allow you to just start a conversation about your own plans, aspirations, and so on. Obviously completely confidential, but we find it actually might help you develop your thinking in terms of, you know, whether exit is something that you should be considering now. Also, we're running a sort of half-day virtual seminar on Tuesday, the 22nd of September, how to get top value for your technology business. And what we're doing here, we're looking very much at the sort of process, the sales process, and how you can maximize value during that process. We're going to have some guest speakers. I think actually, interestingly, Ray Perkins from Anatune is one of our guest speakers on that seminar. The business I talked about in terms of managing its staff, I think that would be a really interesting read. But so that should be, I think, a really helpful seminar if you are really thinking about the prospect of potentially selling your business. Anyway, thank you very much indeed for your time this morning. Hope very much to see you on one of our future webinars, and certainly on that live virtual seminar, or speaking to you on a one-to-one. So thanks very much, and have a good week.